What is good, people, and thanks for tuning in to the MOTO Machines channel. In today's episode, I'm just going to be giving my thoughts, opinions and ideas on the UK e-bike laws, because let's face it, they're outdated, they need revising and updating as soon as possible. And for me personally, the e-bike is an amazing bit of kit. They create no emissions, they reduce congestion, and they're at an affordable price for the everyday person. I've been thinking about this for quite a while now, and I think I've got a solution, or at least a blueprint to start working from. And this is where hopefully you lot will come in handy, because you'll give me a lot of feedback. Firstly then, I'm going to start with the current laws, which are: you can ride an e-bike from 14 years old, it's got to be 250 watts, restricted to 15.5 miles per hour, and only pedal assist only, no throttle. And that fits everyone. That law is for everyone. Now if you ask me, like I said, I've been thinking about it, and you could put these into like categories or groups, and I've come up with 3 groups. First one being, I'd keep it from 14 years old up to 17, and then the next group would be 17 to 21, and then 21 and above. What I would suggest then is just stick with the current rules for the 14 to 17 year olds. Apart from, we'd introduce a throttle, and how this would work, because obviously no one wants an inexperienced youngster pinning it down the road, looking at his phone straight into a parked car or something, or into a car that pulls out in front of them because they were looking at Instagram or Snapchat. So what I would suggest is a throttle that would throttle from in bursts for like 5 seconds or maybe 10. I haven't really thought about the fine detail of this yet, but somehow, or maybe even the throttle would only work from a standing start. It would make things 1,000 times safer when pulling away from junctions or on hills, and it would save lives having that throttle, because trying to pedal an e-bike, a heavy e-bike, from a standing start, when you're under pressure, you can miscalculate it, under-time it, and pull out in front of a car and nearly cause an accident, because there's a slight delay in the power. It's usually about half a crank or about a second until it will kick in, and that's with every e-bike I've ridden anyway. You've got a bit of a delay. Now the throttle will compensate for that delay, and it will save lives. And that would be it for the up to 17 year olds. Then once you got to 17, if you wanted something more powerful, you could then take an electric bike test, which would allow you to ride up to 1,000 watts at 20 miles per hour. But there's conditions. You'd have to wear a cycle helmet and have hydraulic front and rear brake. Plus, I like motorcycles, having your headlight on does get your people's attention more when you're riding about, so I really think that it's acceptable to have a front and rear light and a brake light. Brake light for the obvious, really. You don't want someone going at the back end of you when you're heavy braking from 20 miles down, especially with a lot of the careless drivers that are around. So I think that's acceptable, isn't it? And then when you're 21, if you had taken your test when you were 17, when you're 21, you can then jump onto a 2,000 watt. Or if you hadn't done the bike test, when you get to 21, you'd have to do an electric bike test, which would allow you to ride up to a 2,000 watts at 25 or 28 miles per hour, I would suggest. You don't want to go too over the top. And then again, you've got to have a helmet, hydraulic brakes, and lights with a brake light. Or possibly, like I said, this is all just a blueprint starting off things. You could have, instead of having to take an electric bike test at 21, if you've got a car license or full motorcycle license, then possibly, as you'd have a lot of road, or should have some road experience, you should have a bit of self-control at that age. And I think that could work. I really do. And also, actually, I forgot, when you're 21 as well, and plus, you'd have a full throttle. Like I said, you should have self-control and a bit of road sense by then. And I think it would be definitely advisable to have a throttle which you can use just like a motorbike throttle, rather than the 5 or 10 second bursts. Hopefully this all makes sense. It does to me. It's a bit of food for thought, and like I said, I'd really like some of your feedbacks, especially if you're an e-bike rider. So let me know in the comments below why I mentioned it's most people could afford an electric bike is because that's not what the government wants. They want a cash cow. Now, they'd have a cash cow from this licensing scheme, so that would bring them in a lot of revenue, just like the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. Now, they're all trying to push us towards electric, so let's really start trying to show it, instead of thinking everyone can go out and buy a 50 grand electric car, because that is not possible for me and a lot of people I know. This is a nice trail, isn't it? I'm really in favour for a throttle, whatever the case. It really needs to be implemented into these new laws. It's definitely a lifesaver. Twisting a grip can save a hip. Now I'm trying to think of a motto. Anyway, the reason why I'm talking about all this is because it's all in the media at the moment. There's a lot of attention on the electric bikes. There's been a few major accidents involving them, and I just think there's reasons for this, because they're becoming so popular now. They are everywhere, all sorts of electric bikes, and they need governing a bit better. Somebody needs to use a bit of common sense and realise it's going to happen. You've just got to try and control it. You try and control everything else, the government do. Biggest mafia out there, legal mafia. They are get away with all sorts. But there's my solution, or at least it's a good start to work from. I'm going to start heading home, but as always, I really appreciate that support, especially as you got this far. Hope you enjoyed this upload, and thanks for watching the Motor Machines channel today.